Asher Cole never expected that stopping to help a stranger on the side of the road would change his life forever. All he saw was a 1967 Mustang fastback, its hood popped open, steam rising in the afternoon heat, and beside it, a woman who looked like she belonged anywhere but here, poised, powerful, and completely out of place in his small-town world. She introduced herself as Serafina Lancaster, just a woman passing through, just another car in need of fixing. But Asher would soon learn she wasn't just another woman, and she wasn't just passing through. She was the secret owner of a billion-dollar empire, and she had just set his entire world on fire. What started as a simple act of kindness would pull Asher into a whirlwind of power, ambition, and an undeniable connection he never saw coming. But in a world where money rules and secrets destroy, will their growing bond be enough to survive, or will the forces against them, her ruthless ex, the press, and Asher's own past, tear them apart before they even have a chance? Before we begin, if you love stories of second chances, unexpected romance, and the kind of love that defies the odds, you won't want to miss this one. Hit subscribe and turn on notifications so you don't miss a single chapter. Because trust me, this story is just getting started. Now, sit back, get comfortable, and let's dive into A. Struggling single dad helped a woman fix her Mustang. She secretly owned $1 billion empire. Let the story begin. Asher Cole wiped the sweat from his brow, his grease-stained hands leaving smudges across his forehead. The sweltering summer heat bore down on him as he tightened the last bolt on the aging pickup truck in front of him. He took a step back, rolling his shoulders to ease the tension. Another long day at the garage, another handful of dollars, barely enough to keep him and his 9-year-old son, Elliot, afloat. The small-town garage had been his second home ever since life had knocked him down. Once he had dreams of designing cars, of creating something groundbreaking. But after the unexpected death of his wife and a series of financial blows, he found himself here, fixing other people's vehicles, scraping by, and doing his best to be the father Elliot deserved. A familiar voice snapped him out of his thoughts. "Hey, Asher, you might want to check this out." Jackson Tate, his longtime friend and co-worker, called from the garage entrance. "Looks like someone's in trouble on the highway. Might be worth a roadside save." Asher groaned, but he wiped his hands on a rag and grabbed his toolbox anyway. Roadside repairs weren't unusual, but they often meant dealing with impatient, entitled drivers who treated mechanics like second-class citizens. Still, a job was a job. He hopped into his beat-up truck and followed the dusty road leading out of town. A few miles ahead, he spotted a 1967 Ford Mustang fastback pulled off to the side of the road, its deep midnight blue paint glinting under the sun. It was the kind of car that turned heads, a classic, well-maintained but clearly in distress. Asher slowed down, parking behind it, and stepped out. The hood was popped open, and leaning over the engine was a woman unlike any he had ever seen. She wasn't dressed like someone who belonged out here in the middle of nowhere. Her silk blouse, tailored slacks, and expensive-looking sunglasses screamed money, but she wasn't just some clueless socialite standing helplessly by her car. Her hands were on her hips, and her brows were furrowed in frustration as she studied the engine, as if trying to figure out the problem herself. She turned at the sound of his approaching footsteps. "Need some help?" he asked, keeping his voice even. She pulled off her sunglasses, revealing striking gray eyes. Cool, calculating, but also strangely familiar. "I'm guessing you're a mechanic?" she asked, arching an eyebrow. "Something like that," he replied, setting his toolbox down. "What seems to be the problem?" She sighed, brushing a loose strand of chestnut hair from her face. It started sputtering a few miles back, then just died completely. "I barely made it to the shoulder." Asher peered into the engine bay. The Mustang was in immaculate condition, which meant the problem wasn't likely due to neglect. He checked the battery terminals, scanned for any obvious signs of wear, and then spotted the culprit, a loose fuel line. "Easy fix," he said, reaching for a wrench. "You're lucky it didn't leave you stranded further out." "That's debatable," she muttered under her breath, crossing her arms. Asher worked in silence for a moment, tightening the connection and checking the fuel pump. There was something about her, something guarded, almost restless. She wasn't just some rich woman with an expensive car. There was a weight behind her gaze, like someone carrying a story too heavy for words. "You from around here?" he asked, if only to fill the silence. She hesitated, as if calculating her answer. "Not exactly. Just passing through." "That's a shame," he said, glancing up at her. "Not a lot of people around here drive a beauty like this. Would have been nice to see it on the road more often." Her lips curved slightly, the first trace of a smile. "You're a fan? Of Mustangs? Hell yeah. But a '67 Fastback, that's not just a car, that's a piece of history." Something flickered in her expression, not amusement, but curiosity. "And what about you?" she asked. "What's your story?" Asher tightened the last bolt and straightened, wiping his hands on his jeans. "Just a guy who fixes cars, raises his kid. Nothing as exciting as driving a classic Mustang through the middle of nowhere." She studied him for a moment, as if assessing his words. Then she extended a hand. "Serafina," she said. "Sarah, for short." "Asher," he replied, shaking her hand. Her grip was firm, confident. Not the handshake of someone used to being underestimated. He turned back to the car, wiping the sweat from his brow. "Try starting it up now." Sarah slid into the driver's seat, turned the key, and the Mustang roared back to life. She exhaled a breath she hadn't realized she was holding. "Well," she said, stepping out, "I guess I owe you one." "Just doing my job," Asher replied. She reached into her designer handbag, pulling out a sleek leather wallet. "How much do I owe you?" Asher glanced at the car, then back at her. There was something in her eyes, expecting the usual, expecting him to take the money and move on. He shook his head. "Don't worry about it," Sarah frowned. "But you—" "It took me 10 minutes, he said with a shrug. "Not worth charging for that." She stared at him as if he had just done something completely incomprehensible. People like her weren't used to something for nothing. After a long pause, she put her wallet away and slipped her sunglasses back on. "Well then, I appreciate it, Asher." She climbed into the Mustang, revving the engine once before pulling back onto the road. Asher watched as the car disappeared over the horizon, a strange feeling settling in his chest. Something about Serafina Lancaster told him this. Wouldn't be the last time their paths crossed, and he had no idea just how right he was. The garage was quieter than usual that evening. The scent of motor oil and gasoline clung to the air as Asher Cole wiped down his tools, his mind still lingering on the woman from earlier that day, Serafina Lancaster. The name rolled through his thoughts like a song he couldn't shake. It wasn't just her striking looks or the way she carried herself. It was the way she had looked at him, as if trying to figure him out. As if she weren't used to people refusing her money. Jackson. Tate, his longtime friend and co-worker, sauntered in, tossing a dirty rag onto the workbench. "You've been weirdly quiet since you got back," he remarked. "Let me guess, another rich city type with no clue how to handle their car?" Asher smirked, shaking his head. "Not exactly. She knew her way around that Mustang. At least enough to try to diagnose the issue before I got there." Jackson whistled low. "A woman who drives a '67 Fastback and actually gives a damn about it? That's rare." He leaned against the bench. "So, what's her deal?" "No idea. Just passing through," she said. Jackson raised an eyebrow. "And you believe that?" Asher exhaled, shaking his head. "Not really." Before Jackson could press further, the office phone rang, the shrill sound echoing through the garage. Asher wiped his hands on his jeans before answering. Cole's Auto, Asher speaking, a smooth, professional voice responded. Mr. Cole, this is Mark Ellington. I'm calling on behalf of Sterling Automotive Group. Asher frowned. Sterling Automotive? The name rang a bell. One of the biggest automotive corporations in the country. Yes, the man continued. We're expanding our service operations, and we're looking for skilled mechanics to head up a few of our specialty shops. Your name came up as a recommendation, and we'd like to offer you an interview for a management position at our new restoration division. Asher blinked, gripping the phone tighter. I think you might have the wrong guy. Ellington chuckled. I assure you we don't. Your work is well regarded and we're interested in your expertise. If you're open to the opportunity, we'd like you to visit our facility in the city for a tour and a formal discussion. Asher hesitated. The job sounded too good to be true. High-level restoration work, steady pay, a real future for Elliot. But why now? Why him? Still, it wasn't like he had opportunities knocking on his door every day. When's the meeting? He asked. Tomorrow morning, if you're available. We'll arrange transportation if necessary. Asher glanced at Jackson, who was now watching him with curiosity. I can get there myself, he said finally. Great. I'll email you the details. After hanging up, Asher stared at the phone, the weight of the moment sinking in. Jackson smirked. So, you gonna tell me what that was about, or do I have to guess? Asher exhaled. Some company called Sterling Automotive wants me to interview for a management job. Jackson's smirk widened. Damn! You sure you didn't just win the lottery? It doesn't add up, Asher muttered. Why would a billion-dollar company suddenly be interested in some small-town mechanic? Jackson shrugged. Maybe someone important. Saw your work. Maybe it's just luck. But Asher wasn't a man who believed in luck. Dressed in his best, which wasn't much, just a clean button-down and his least worn-out pair of jeans, Asher parked outside Sterling Automotive's private facility. The contrast between his garage and this sleek, high-tech corporate center was almost laughable. As he walked inside, the polished floors, glass-walled offices, and the hum of efficient machinery all made one thing clear. He was far from home. Receptionist led him to a conference room, where Mark Ellington, the man from the phone, greeted him with a warm handshake. Mr. Cole, thanks for coming in. Have a seat. Asher settled into the chair, eyeing the man warily. Appreciate the offer, but I still don't get why I'm here. Ellington smiled, lacing his fingers together. We're looking for someone with hands-on expertise, someone who understands classic restorations at an elite level. You've built a strong reputation. Yeah, but I never applied for anything, Asher cut in. So who recommended me? Before Ellington could answer, the door opened. Asher turned, and his breath caught in his throat. Seraphina Lancaster stepped into the room. She wasn't in her roadside attire anymore. She wore a tailored navy suit, her hair styled sleek and professional. She looked like she belonged in this world, like she owned the damn place. Because she did. Asher, she said smoothly, as if they hadn't just met under entirely different circumstances the day before. He stood slowly. You set this up? Her expression was unreadable. You have talent. I thought it was time someone recognized it. A bitter taste filled his mouth. So this is charity? Seraphina's brows lifted. No, this is an opportunity, one you've earned. Asher clenched his jaw. He hated the idea of being someone's good deed, someone's project. I don't take handouts, he said flatly. Ellington shifted uncomfortably, but Seraphina didn't waver. Then don't think of it that way, she said. Think of it as a chance to do what you love, at a level where you can actually make a difference. Asher wanted to walk away, to tell them both, where they could shove their corporate offers. But then he thought about Elliot. His son deserved better than a father too proud to take a real shot at something bigger. After a long silence, he exhaled. Tell me more about the job. Serafina's lips curled slightly. I thought you'd never ask. And just like that, Asher Cole's life was about to change forever. Asher sat stiffly in the luxurious office of Sterling Automotive, his arms crossed as he listened to Mark Ellington lay out the details of the offer. The place screamed wealth, polished mahogany desks, floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city skyline, and the subtle hum of efficiency. It was a world far removed from his small-town garage. And then there was Serafina Lancaster, the woman who, less than 24 hours ago, had been standing on the side of the road with a broken-down Mustang. Now, she was perched gracefully on the opposite side of the desk, cool and composed, as if she hadn't just turned his life upside down. You'd be leading our new classic restoration division, Ellington explained. We need someone with hands-on expertise, someone who understands the art of restoration, not just the mechanics, but the soul of these vehicles. Asher exhaled slowly. And this job just so happened to open up right after I helped you on the highway? His gaze flicked to Serafina, suspicion thick in his voice. Her expression remained unreadable. The job existed before you showed up, Asher. I just expedited the process, he scoffed. And why would you do that? Because I saw your work. I saw your passion. And I believe in investing in people who deserve a shot. Her words were smooth, carefully measured. But Asher wasn't an idiot. This feels an awful lot like charity. Serafina sighed, resting her elbows on the desk. You keep saying that. Why does it bother you so much that someone might actually think you're talented enough to deserve this? Because nothing in my life has ever come that easy. His voice was sharper than he intended, his frustration bleeding through. People don't just throw opportunities at guys like me. When they do, it's usually because they want something, a flicker of something. Understanding, pain crossed her face, but it was gone in an instant. This isn't a handout, Asher. It's a business proposition. Ellington cleared his throat, cutting in before the tension could thicken. Let's talk numbers. He slid a folder across the desk. The salary is 6 figures, full benefits, relocation package if you need it. You'd have access to state-of-the-art equipment, a dedicated team under you, and the chance to work on some of the rarest classic cars in the country. Asher didn't touch the folder. The numbers didn't impress him. He wasn't a man who chased money. What he cared about was control. Control over his life. Control over what happened to his son. How much freedom would I have? He asked. Or am I just another corporate puppet who has to run every decision through some boardroom? Ellington hesitated, glancing at Serafina. She leaned forward slightly. You'd have creative control over your projects, she said, but you'd be part of Sterling Automotive. That comes with expectations. And if I say no, she didn't blink. Then you go back to your garage, fixing cars one at a time, barely. Scraping by and hoping things magically get better. His jaw tightened. She knew exactly where to hit him. Elliot flashed through his mind. His son deserved stability, opportunity, a father who could give him more than just getting by. Finally, Asher exhaled. I need time to think. Serafina nodded as if she had expected that. Take the night, but don't take too long. Her words lingered as he stood and left. Back in his modest 2-bedroom rental, Asher stood at the kitchen counter, staring at the contract without really seeing it. The numbers blurred together, drowned out by the weight of the decision. He glanced at Elliot, who sat at the table, working on his homework. His son was growing up fast, too fast, and Asher was running out of ways to give him the life he deserved. You okay, Dad? Elliot's voice was small but observant. Asher forced a smile. Yeah, kid, just a big decision. Elliot tilted his head. Is it about the fancy car lady? Asher chuckled. Yeah, something like that. She seemed nice, Elliot mused, tapping his pencil against his notebook. And you always tell me that good things happen when we take chances, Asher stilled. out of the mouths of babes. He had spent so much of his life playing it safe, afraid to trust that anything good would last. Maybe it was time to change that. The next morning, Asher walked back into Sterling Automotive, the contract signed and folded neatly in his jacket pocket. He found Serafina in her office, reviewing a stack of paperwork. She barely looked up as he entered. So, Asher pulled the signed contract from his pocket and placed it on her desk. "I'm in." For the first time since they met, her mask slipped. A small, satisfied smile touched her lips. "Good." Ellington stepped in, shaking Asher's hand. "Welcome to Sterling Automotive." Asher nodded, but kept his gaze locked on Serafina. "Just so we're clear," he said, voice steady, "I'm doing this for my son, not because I need saving." Serafina's gray eyes softened, just a fraction. Noted, but something in the way she said it made Asher wonder if she had just saved him anyway. Asher Cole wasn't used to luxury. Walking through Sterling Automotive's high-tech restoration facility felt like stepping into another world. Gleaming glass walls, top-of-the-line diagnostic tools, and rows of classic cars in pristine condition. This wasn't just a garage, it was a shrine to automotive history. It should have been exciting, invigorating even, but instead, a familiar unease settled in his gut. He didn't belong here. A part of him had expected to feel this way. The son of a small-town mechanic, standing in the middle of a billion-dollar empire, pretending like he belonged. But it wasn't just about the sleek environment. It was the people. The moment he walked into the main floor, a hush spread across the room. The mechanics, the supervisors, the corporate suits, they all turned to look at him, some with curiosity, some with doubt, and some with outright hostility. "Ah, the new boss," a voice drawled from the far end of the room. Asher turned to see Garrett Vaughn, the lead technician, sauntering toward him. The man was broad-shouldered in his mid-40s and had the air of someone who had seen too many people come and go. "You must be Asher Cole," Vaughn said, wiping grease from his hands. "The golden boy handpicked by Ms. Lancaster herself." Asher didn't miss the bite in his tone. He met Vaughn's gaze evenly. "Not much of a golden boy," he replied. "Just a guy who knows cars." Vaughn let out a short laugh. "We'll see about that." He gestured around the room. "This shop runs like a machine. We've got the best restoration team in the country. Guys who have been doing this for decades. No offense, but some small-town mechanic walking in and taking charge." He shrugged. "Gonna take a little more than Ms. Lancaster's say-so to win us over." Asher's jaw tightened, but he didn't bite. He'd been in enough fights in his life to know when someone was trying to bait him. "I wouldn't expect you to just roll out a red carpet," Asher said coolly. "I'll prove myself the same way I always have, by getting my hands dirty and doing the work." Vaughn tilted his head, considering him for a long moment. Then, with a smirk, he stepped aside. "Well then, boss, let's see what you've got." The challenge was clear. Asher had just walked into a battlefield. By mid-afternoon, Asher found himself under the hood of a 1969 Dodge Charger, one of the most prized restorations in the shop. The car had been sitting untouched for weeks, Vaughn claiming the engine issues were too delicate for just anyone to handle. It was a test. One wrong move, and he'd prove Vaughn right, that he didn't belong here. Asher rolled up his sleeves, ignoring the way the other mechanics lingered. Watching, he focused on the car, listening to the subtle hesitations in the engine's rhythm. Within minutes, he knew exactly what was wrong. "You've got a fuel-air imbalance," Asher called over his shoulder. "The carburetor is misaligned." Vaughn, standing nearby, let out a scoff. "That's what you think?" Asher didn't respond. He grabbed a wrench, adjusted the carburetor, and without hesitation turned the key. The Charger roared to life, smooth and perfect. Silence fell over the garage. A few of the mechanics exchanged glances. Some nodded in quiet approval. Even Vaughn, despite his earlier smugness, looked mildly impressed. Asher leaned against the car, wiping his hands.